also welcome all other participants to the webinar. I request Sasmita Panigrahi to give a brief introductions of our resource person, Dr. Himanshu Shekhar Mishra. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have been given the privilege to introduce our resource person, Dr. Himanshu Shekhar Mishra. So, Dr. Himanshu Shekhar Mishra is a young social researcher who teaches political science in Sambalpur University. Before joining Sambalpur University as an assistant professor, he was the awardee of Radhakrishnan Postdoc Fellowship, ICSSR Postdoc Fellowship, guest faculty of Ravensa University, and research assistant of Hyderabad University. While pursuing his doctoral work in JNU, he had his doctoral fellowship from ICSSR. He did his PG and MPhil from Hyderabad University. As young social researcher, he has presented many papers in national and international seminars and conferences. Among them, some of the works have been published as a part of edited volume, conference proceedings, and journal. His understanding of academia is that it is not a profession but a call for commitment to something larger and greater. For him, living for academics means going beyond professionalism through the dedication of common good. So far as his administrative experience is concerned, he is currently serving as an assistant controller of examination of Sambalpur University. Earlier, he had served as an university nodal officer of AISHE cell of the university. We feel delighted to have such an eminent personality today as our resource person. Now, I request Dr. Mishra to deliver his valuable property right conceptual understanding. Thank you. Over to Dr. Mishra.
So thank you, madam. Thank you so much for your invitation, and I'm also thankful to the principal of your institution. So am I audible to all of you? May I get a confirmation from your side?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you so much. So today I will speak on intellectual property right. Basically, it means whether I have a right over my intellectual creation or not, right? So property is not that it's a piece of land or a car or a house, right? So all these, car, house, a piece of land, these are called tangible property. Property can also be intangible property. For example, when a researcher produce a piece of work, when an author write a article, write a book, that is also a property, and that is called intangible property, or we can say that this is a non-physical property. And all these intellectual creations are intangible assets or non-physical property. And what are those intangible assets? For example, patent. Patent basically means it is an invention that provides a new way of doing something. Another intangible property or asset is trademark. So trademark basically it is a symbol that denotes a specific product, and largely it legally differentiates it from all other products. Another example of intellectual property is copyright, right? So copyright basically means it is the right of a creator over his or her literary work or artistic work. And another form or kind of intellectual property is trade secrets. And trade secrets are a kind of or a type of intellectual property that includes formula, process, designs, instruments that have an inherent economic value, and because they are not known or readily ascertainable by others. So these four kinds: patents, trademark, copyright, and trade secret. These are four kinds of intellectual property. Now the question on which this talk is based, whether do the author or does the author has right over his or her intellectual creation, and is that right absolute? Right. So if I am publishing anything or if I am developing a patent, do I have absolute right over my creation, over my patent, over my book or article, right? And is that right absolute? This is the question at the end of this deliberation on this topic. We will come to know, or we will get the answer of this question, whether the right of an author is absolute over his or her own creation, whether it is that creation may be patent, that creation may be a book or article, whatever. Now before that, I think we need to understand right. Why I feel it is important to discuss right, because right is a political term that is mostly misused. Day-to-day life we use rights without understanding what that right is all about. So rights, how to understand right, how to define right. Now rights are claims. Rights are claims, and that is recognized by the society and enforced by the state. And these claims are related with or related to individual's personality, right? So the claim what is related to individual's personality, that claim individual may raise as his or her right. And to develop such personality, individual must have the opportunity of free action. Now without freedom, no individual can develop his or her personality. Now to seek these opportunities, the individual puts forth certain claims to whom? Claims to the state. And these claims should not be selfish, otherwise it may not get social recognition. Remember the way I defined right. So I defined right, the claims that is recognized by the society. So the claim what individual seek is his or her right, that requires the societal recognition. And if your claims are selfish, then certainly society will not accept your claim, hence you may not enjoy your right. And without social recognition, the claim becomes empty claim, and empty claims generally it are not sanctioned or enforced by the state. So the claim of the individual must not be empty claims. So as long as rights promote social welfare or common welfare, then society recognizes it and state sanction it. So it means rights are not absolute, rather rights are limited. Rights are limited. Why? Because there are many legitimate constraints of right, as it is not at all a privilege. So rights are not privileges. Rights are basically, it is a responsibility towards the greater good. It is a responsibility towards social welfare or common welfare. And intellectual property right has also the constants. If all rights, intellectual property right is one kind of right or right in a specific context, that right has also the constraints. Now, before going in detail about the constraints of intellectual property right, let's understand first what is property. What is property, then what is intellectual property. So I have prepared a PPT, and I will share my PPT with all of you, and we will definitely try to understand what is this intellectual property right. My PPT is visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is it visible? Again, I am confirming from you from that side.
Yes, sir. It is PPT is not visible, sir.
Okay. Okay, I think there is some technical problem from this side. I thought of that it will work, but I'm sitting in a before different laptop. Again, I'm trying. There is some problem, but okay, let me do something. Please be with me.
Sir, your screen is not visible. Yeah.
So sorry for the inconvenience. I hope that my PPT is visible. Is it visible to other side?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is
Yes,
visible.
sir.
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So thank you. So as I said that we need to understand property first before understanding intellectual property. Right.
Sir, screen is not visible.
So I think it is visible to all of you. Okay. Coming to the first.
Yes, sir. Visible.
Okay. Thank you for the presence. So as I said that we need to understand property, then we will try to understand intellectual property. Uh, you know, almost all human writers or activists, they have all unanimously they believe that the institution of private property is required by nature. So it is not a man-made institution. It is nature-made institution, right? And this view is backed by or backed up with the evidence by a long and solid tradition of Occidental thought, which exposes the nature of human persons who requires private property, right? So it is according to the nature of human person. It is the nature of the individual that each and every individual, they have a natural desire towards property. And why individuals requires property? First, individuals has a natural desire for property. Second, individuals has natural desire to provide help to his friends as well as strangers, which he or she can only do if he or she disposes of property. So we want property because we have a desire to help our friends and help strangers. And individuals needs property in order to discharge his responsibility in this world of material goods. And to discharge this responsibility, it is very much essential for the individual to have power over these goods, right? And individual needs property to satisfy his or her impulses, to make provision for future, and thereby acquire independence from chance and from the goodwill of other person. So we need property for our futures, for our security. Property is related with individual security. Property is related with certainty. Property is related with solidarity. If you do not have property, then people will not stay with you. So if you are having property, it means people will stay with you. So this is practice, and we all realize it. Theory is deeply connected with the practice. So this is the significance of property for individual. So individual has a natural instinct towards property. All individuals, some individuals says it openly, and some individual do not. Okay, next slide. Now the relevance of property is also there for human society. I said it is relevant for human person, individual, and it is also relevant for the human society, and for following reasons. These are the reasons, and that's why property is relevant for the human society. And the basic function, what are these reasons? First, the basic function of property is to determine what belongs to whom. So when you talk about property, it means property means private property. It means what is belonging to whom? Is it your property or my property? Now in doing so, property secures peace and reduces the scope of dispute. Now once I know that this is my property, that is your property, then certainly I will not engage myself with you in any conflict, or there will not be any tension. Suppose we do not know that what is my property or what is your property, we do not know. For example, common property. Now, to a common property, individuals, they claim from their own side. The way it was happening in the state of nature, might was the right. right? If you are stronger, then you can claim it. If you are weaker, then you will be silent, right? If it is a common property, then common property will lead to dispute. It cannot ensure peace. If property is private, then it can ensure peace, it can reduce the dispute. The second point, property is a prerequisite for commercial exchange and technical progress, and it enhances the network of social relationship between individuals person. So property, it is constituting the human society, and how the property constitutes human society. Now property is necessary for commercial exchange. For any constitution of society, there is a requirement of commercial exchange. Property is related to the technical, progress. Any kind of, technical innovation, you need property. Without property, can you imagine innovation? And property enhances the network of social relationship, between individual persons. We relate with one another because of our property. Third, without private property, people would not be independent, but all would depend on a central authority. Now, if individuals will not have, property, private property, then it will ultimately establish a dictatorial form of government. Power will be centralized, right? The ruler will be, despotic in nature. So private property democratizes, the society. Private property, do not allow individual to depend on a central authority, because they can manage themselves. They don't need the help of, either state government or the central government. And private property is a prerequisite for freedom of individual person as well as for society as a whole. If you are not having property, then you cannot have freedom. Having property means having freedom. Having property means you are an important person in the society. Having property means you can work towards social good or common good. Next slide. Now, the institution of private property indeed must be contained in any legal order that aims to do justice to human nature and human society. So whether it is human nature or human society, the institution of private property has a role, and all the, legal order, they must, understand this point. So property, why we need property? The property is not an end in itself. Property is always a means. Property is not an end in itself. It is always a means to realize the higher objectives of human society. And what are these higher objectives of human society? Protection of freedom, protection of human life, protection of human dignity. Property is necessary for me, for my freedom. I can protect my freedom if I have property. I can protect my life if I have property. I can protect my dignity if I have property. So property is related with freedom, life, and dignity of the individual. The institution of private property has originally been conceived and applied only to the tangible goods. So earlier, property meant either land, car, building, house. These are called tangible goods. And this intellectual property, what we call intangible property or immaterial property rights, what we are discussing today, that is, or that have emerged in recent time, and which includes all intangible assets, non-physical properties such as patent, domain name, invention, logos, trademark, trade secrets. Now, just the beginning of the talk, if if you have remembered, I just said it. These are the non-physical property owned by a person or company, and its right to be protected against arbitrary use of their intellectual property without prior consent of its creator. For example, if I have, car, I am a professor of Sambalpur University, assistant professor. I do have two kinds of, property. I have tangible property. I have intangible property. My tangible property means I have a house. I have all the, household instruments with me. I have a car. I have money. I have bank balance, what I can count. So these are my tangible property. And what are the intangible property? Now the work, even today I am speaking to you, that is also intellectual property. That is called intangible property. I have publication, I have books, right? If I'm a scientist, then I have patents. Even doctors, they also develop their own research. Their research is their intellectual property. And as an individual, I need to protect my property. I need to have right to protect my property. It is not that I will protect only to my tangible property. Even I also need protection of my intangible property. For example, if I am writing a book, if you are, doing your research, you are referring my book and you are not giving quotation, then you are not using my property perfectly. So you have to give quotation, otherwise it may lead to plagiarism, and it's a serious offense. It may spoil your entire academic career. So I hope that you got a sense that every individual needs protection of their property. Property means tangible property and non-tangible property. And this intellectual property right means it is a right, or my intellectual creation or I have the right to protect my intellectual creation against the arbitrary use without prior consent of me. Without taking my consent, without giving proper reference, if you are using my work, then you are arbitrarily using my intellectual property. Hence, I can sue you in the court of law. So I hope that you got a sense what is this intellectual property right. Now today, I mean, those who are involved in research, they know that now with this rapid pace of technological progress, new methods of exploiting intellectual creation triggers a demand for a new legislation securing the control over such exploitation to the author. Now today you can find how researchers, they use Turnitrin software to find out whether they have plagiarized or not. If the software gives an indication, that software basically means it's just checking whether your word is matching with the words of earlier work or not. Basically, Turnitrin software is not a machine, or not a software of indicating whether it is a plagiarized or not. It's just a similarity index. It searches the similarity index. Now once you know that there is no similarity index, then you claim it as your work, but certainly it is not. It is not your work. It is not your work. You have changed the words, but it is not your idea. You have borrowed this idea from others. Now you can find different mechanism today in which are used by current students, scholars, researchers, and they exploit the intellectual creation of others. So that's why the demand of intellectual property right is right. The more mechanisms are there to exploit the intellectual property of others, the more demand will also it will come how to protect the intellectual property rights. Next slide. Now, such legislation, right, intellectual property right legislation, is based on moral as well as economic rationales. There is a moral and economic side to such legislation. The moral argument postulates a natural right of the inventor to claim property in his idea. The moral argument postulates a natural right of the inventor to claim property in his idea. For example, if I have written a book, I have developed an idea, it is morally that I have right over my idea. If I have said it first, then that idea has been given by me. If you are referring my idea, then you have to give the reference. That is the moral, right. So I have right over my idea, and that idea I have, shared it through a book or through an article, through a patent. And since I have put labor on that idea, I also deserve to get some financial, some finance for it. That is the economic, aspect of intellectual property right legislation. So there is a moral aspect and there is an economic aspect to intellectual property right, legislation. If you are referring my book, but if you are not giving the reference of my book, then I can demand compensation from you, and you have to pay me. That is the economic reason of intellectual property. Now, if the owner of tangible assets, tangible means physical assets, has full control over his or her property, the term intellectual property seems to mean that creator and inventor should have full control over their works and invention. So if I have full control over my tangible property, so also I have full control, or I should have full control over my non-tangible property. The use of the term intellectual property thus favors the ambitions of those who wish to secure complete control over the exploitation of ideas and knowledge. It means I need the intellectual property right so that you will not get any chance to exploit my work, exploit my idea, exploit my knowledge. That's why I need the intellectual property. But now the question is that right, or is that control over the exploitation of ideas and knowledge is absolute, or can complete control be possible on intellectual property? Can I say that there is no difference between the tangible property and intangible property? Next slide. I think we cannot say that the tangible property is same with the intangible property. We cannot say that if I have full control over the tangible property, so also I should have full control over the non-tangible property. Now, intellectual property, in contrast to the tangible property, always been designed to grant incomplete control over the subject matter. Difference between the tangible property and intangible property. Now, the intangible property, they are limited in time, and tangible property have no temporal limitation. Temporal limitation. That means if I have the right over my book, it is not absolute, because I have the larger social responsibility. I cannot say that if you want to read my book, you have to purchase that book always, because knowledge is a shared knowledge. Even the idea what I have developed, that is not based on my own idea. I came to know the ideas of different. Every author must think that their work must also have the social relevance. Remember the way I defined right. Every right has a, societal contribution or responsibility of societal contribution. So also intellectual property right has the responsibility of social contribution. So I can claim my right over my work for a limited period of time. But if I purchase a book or car, do I have a limited control over tangible property? No. Once the house is mine, it will continue to be mine. And after my death, my offsprings will take over the responsibility or take over the property, tangible property. But there is also, limitation. For example, car. If you are purchasing a car, then car is a tangible property. But can we say that car do not have a temporal limitation? For example, if you see the regulation after 15 years, after 15 years, your car is not in a condition to run on the highway, because it is not a proper car. It may be defective for environment. It may be defective to human, life. So can you say that all tangible assets have no temporal limitation? No, there are some tangible, assets or tangible property that have a that has a temporal limitation. For example, car, after 15 years, you cannot run a car on the highway. And the scope, for example, there are fair use provisions in copyright. Intellectual property can be fairly used. But do I have a fair or right to fair use of your car? Can I claim that you have a car? I want to use your car fairly and I have the right to use your car fairly? Then certainly not. I can use your intellectual property fairly, but I cannot say that I have a right to use your property, car or building fairly. Now, in this sense, it is appropriate to examine whether intellectual property corresponds to the classical concept of property or not. Can we say that intellectual property is equivalent to tangible property or classic concept of property? Are tangible property or immaterial property really the same thing? Now, there is a great difference between the subject matters of property in tangible assets and subject matters of intellectual property. Next slide. Now, what is the subject matter of tangible property? Now, most tangible assets, land, livestock, house, car, livestock means house, car, household instruments, are scarce resources and their availability is limited. So tangible assets, that is not enough for human society. There is a scarcity of tangible resources and their availability is very much limited. Now economic theory speaks of rivalrous resources. If such rivalrous resources means resources that is used by me, at the same time it cannot be used by you, that is called rivalrous resources. Now if such rivalrous resources are not the property of someone, then they risk to be overexploited and under-maintained. For example, if there is a common property and that property belongs to none, now who will take care of that common property? Everyone will try to get benefits of that common property, but nobody will protect the property. If such rivalrous resources are not the property of someone, if it is not a private property, now in the absence of a property right linked to it, the rivalrous resources will degenerate and be depleted. That means a property can only get protection if that property is attached with the private individual. Right. The value of rivalrous resources for society is highest when they stand in private property. Private property in tangible assets is thus beneficial for society. So tangible property can be protected only when this tangible property will be attached to any private individuals. Common properties are not taken care of. So that is the subject matter of the tangible property. There is a scarcity tangible property, there is a scarcity of tangible property, and these tangible properties, they are in economists, they say it is rivalrous resources, and these rivalrous resources are overexploited, are under maintained, because these resources, there is no private individual to take care of those resources. Now those resources can be maintained only when these rivalrous resources are attached to a private individual. Coming to the next slide. And what is the subject matter of the intellectual property? Now intellectual property or knowledge is not a limited resources. There is no scarcity. The intellectual property ultimately depends on our mind. I can produce more and more intellectual property. So also you can also produce more and more intellectual property. My intellectual property will help you to build up your intellectual property. Hence, intellectual property is not a limited. It is not, there is no scarcity of intellectual property. It is also non-rivalrous. Non-rivalrous means a particular, if a thought is in me, that doesn't mean that that particular thought is not within you, right? If a thought is within me, that doesn't mean that that particular thought is not within you. That may be within you. You may give a different thought to your thought. You can produce a different knowledge. If we are provided with the same data, will we conclude same? No, we will not conclude same, because we have different perspective. So intellectual property, it is limited resources, it is non-rivalrous. The nature of non-rivalrous resources is such that they cannot be overexploited. The more you exploit the intellectual property, then the more you are generating values for the society. If intellectual properties are overexploited, then it may become more valuable for society as a whole. if they are used to the largest possible extent. The more you exploit your mind, the more values you can generate for the society, and you can contribute for societal good or common good. The more person dispose of knowledge, the better for the development prospects of society as a whole. If in our society all individuals will become knowledgeous, then ultimately our society will become a developed society. Let's take an example. If A teaches a language to B, now both will able to speak this language, and given that the number of persons speaking and understanding it has increased, the language has itself become the more useful, which is also the interest of A. For example, if I know a particular language, and if I teach a language to you, then what I want? I will always want that you should learn that language, you should speak that language, right? So the more I, spread this language, the more I teach this language to different students, then it produces greater value for the society. Society ultimately, today it is you, tomorrow it is others, right? It is always better to teach more than teach less. Right? The more you can produce, the more learner you can produce, that is your contribution, to the society. That is what you want. So shall I say that, I learn a particular language and I have, put labor on it, hence it is my property. I will not, expose it. I will not tell you, I will hide it. No. Then my intellectual property is not contributing the social welfare or common welfare. Hence, in this sense, invention cannot be a subject of property. If you are inventing something, you cannot say that is mine, I will hide it, and I will not let it know to the larger society. Next. Like property in general, intellectual property is to some extent a prerequisite for commercial exchange and for specialization in task of each member of society. That means intellectual properties has two functions. One, intellectual properties produces economy, some money, and that money will go to the publisher or the funding agency, and some part of that money will come to the creator of that piece of knowledge. That is first function. Then the second function of intellectual property is, developing specialization in each member of the society. Now, if I am, developing some knowledge, then my knowledge must reach to a poor student, poor intelligent student, right? The person or a student who cannot purchase a book, knowledge must reach to that, student. For example, without copyright, it would be difficult for authors to perform, to specialize in a creation of work of art, and for producer to finance the production of artistic work or performances. Consequently, there will be less creativity. For example, if you will not, give due recognition to copyright, then in the absence of copyright, then the producer of that knowledge or the funding agencies, they will not get any price of their labor, right? You can say that what you are producing, that is for all, that has to serve the common good. Now, such thinking is not a bad thinking, but if you do so, then you will find that intellectuals will stop developing, knowledge. Publishers will not be that much interested to publish a piece of work. So intellectual property, like property in general, contributes to social progress. For example, patents may create an incentives for research and innovation, and trademark may create an incentives to improve the quality of goods and services. So if I am producing a piece of knowledge, then that piece of knowledge must be beneficial to the society on one hand, and at the same time, I must get some kind of remuneration for that piece of knowledge. It should be in both ways. Remuneration should be part of any development of intellectual property. At the same time, intellectual property must have, social relevance. Next slide. Both property in tangible assets and in intellectual property have in common that they are not end in themselves, but exist to benefit the society. So tangible property, I also mentioned it earlier, the tangible property or non-tangible property or bracket intellectual property, they are not end, they are the means. And what is the end? End is to give benefits to the society. Now, in the case of intellectual property, the objective is not to prevent overusing and depletion of resources concerned, but to enhance its creation, given that the very nature of good ideas implies that the more they are used, the better it is for society. Right. So far as the intellectual property is concerned, we have to take care in two senses. First, we have to develop a balanced remuneration system, right? It's not to be more or it's not to be less, so that intellectuals will get incentives to, produce knowledge, patents, and at the same time, it has a society or societal responsibility, right? I said that earlier, that it is temporal in nature. It is temporal in nature, right? To some, for 2 years, 3 years, you can claim your commercial right on your work, but after that, you have to make it as a open educational resources, OER, right? So that it will reach to the larger audience, and if the larger audience will get a scope to use your work, then it is always better for the society. So the objective is rather to set an incentives for innovators to create, research and develop, and to make their innovation publicly available. So two things are important: availability of their work in public, and second, developing a right form of, incentives system. Next slide. Now, granting to small reward for creativity would mean to unfairly exploit the creator. So if you are paying less to the creator, then it is also unfair. And if you are paying more or excess, then you are doing it at the, whereas rewarding him excessively would mean to privilege his particular interest at the expenses of the interest of the society. For example, if you are pay huge to the creator of knowledge, then you are doing a kind of social injustice, because there are so many, creative works. But can you, pay huge to other kinds of creative work? then it may lead to social injustice. So it should not be neither less or it should not be more also. So even if the rewards for innovations were too modest, there would be probably be less innovation. All the innovators, they always demand huge for their innovation. And that's the tragedy of our society. If the knowledge creator, if the innovator will behave like a businessman, then they are causing towards the social degeneration. And today what we are experiencing, we all, right? So it is very difficult to you know uh, to know what should be the amount of reward. It should not be less, it should not be more. Even if it is modest, it is probably that less innovation may probably come. Right. Now it is important to note that innovation and creativity do not take place in vacuum. Instead, each innovative step is based on pre-existing ideas. And if these pre-existing ideas are owned by someone, the owner may use his exclusive right to prevent the derivative innovation from taking place. In such situation, intellectual property rights can have the perverse effect of stealing innovation, stifling innovation instead of promoting it. We need to understand that we as an innovator must understand that the idea what we are talking about, that is not our own purely. That is based on the shared knowledge. The idea what we claim is our original idea, that has not developed in vacuum. There are pre-existing ideas, and after analyzing those pre-existing ideas, I developed my idea. Hence, normatively speaking, I should not claim that my idea is mine only. So if I consider that my idea is mine, then I will not share it with the larger audience. Hence, I become the obstacle of promoting ideas. I should always expose my ideas to the larger audience, so that my ideas may become the pre-existing idea for other researchers to develop their own idea. So one idea is developed on the basis of always pre-existing idea. So my idea, after some time, it will become a pre-existing idea. The way thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and every synthesis will become a thesis subsequently. So that's why intellectual property right is a temporal in nature. You cannot say that this is the truth. For some time it is truth, but again the truth will be challenged and new form of knowledge can be generated. Next slide. So the main objective must be to enhance progress. Patents and copyrights are subordinated to the objects. So intellectual property right, it is not for only commercial use, or there is not only the commercial component to intellectual property right. The commercial component of intellectual property right, that is subordinated to a larger objective, that is progress. In fact, intellectual property rights are tool to achieve the progress, while mean to encourage innovation and creativity. They must be tailored in such a way that innovation becomes available to public, and most notably to other innovators, as soon as possible, and at the lowest possible cost. A maximum of innovation should be taking place. It should fill into the public domain as quickly as feasible in order to generate further innovation. As I said, there are two functions of intellectual property. One is the economic function, another is the societal function or progressive function. Now, progressive function cannot be subordinated, but economic function of intellectual property right can be subordinated to the what? Progress. Next slide. So let me take a glass of water and coming back. Okay. So even in the absence of intellectual property right, many authors or inventors would be creative. For example, most scientists would be keen to publish even if they received no royalties in return. Rather than in the royalties they earn when copies of their publications are sold hugely. And their rewards lies in the increased public attention and recognition they receive if they manage to publish in a well-reputed scientific journal. For example, it is also incentives for me if I am publishing my work with a good publisher. I do not need royalties from them. And my royalties is that it is reaching to the larger audience, and ultimately I am becoming an intellectual. So it's not that incentives are always in the form of money. There are also non-monetary incentives. The generation of new works and invention relies not only on creative inspiration but also on investment. So who are the stakeholders of a new knowledge, of a patent? It is not that that creative person is the only stakeholder of that piece of knowledge. Even the person who have invested, even the publisher is also having right over your intellectual property. Investor must be able to gain revenue from their investment, otherwise they will abstain from it. Hence, patents and copyrights not only serve the interest of artists and inventors but also interest of the investors. So there are so many stakeholders. However, while serving the interest of the investors, patent and copyrights must not protect the existence of a specific business model of investor. So the purpose is not how to give benefits to the publisher. The purpose is not how to give benefits to that person who has either created the knowledge or who has funded for that particular project. The purpose is always, even the interest of the investor is subordinated to the societal purpose of enhancing creativity. So the purpose of property, intellectual property, is social. It is not economical. Economy is fast, but economy is not everything. It has a social responsibility. It has to enhance the creativity. Next slide. A balance must be sought between the interest of the author. So two things are very important. One, the interest of the author or other stakeholders of a particular work, particular patent on one hand, and societal objectives on the other. Right. One is involved with economy and money, another is involved with your responsibility towards society. These are the two extremes. Now, if legislation on intellectual property corresponds to this purpose, I mean a balance must be sought. What should be the nature of balance is that's a different discussion, but a balance must be there. Every knowledge, new knowledge, must take care the economics part of it and must take care the societal part of it, take care of its societal part. So if legislation on intellectual property corresponds to this purpose, there can be no true conflict between intellectual property and policy objectives such as development, public health, or fight against hunger. So these are the objectives, these are the social goals. Their publication or intellectual property must work towards development. Intellectual property should always promote public health. Intellectual property should always fight against the hunger. It should not be the reason of hunger. It should not tell a poor intelligent student that we will not provide you this new book. You have to pay 15,000 for this book. No. Then you are exploiting that hunger or a person who is suffering from hunger. So economy is always subordinated. Economy is important part of publication of a new knowledge, but it is always subordinated to larger goal, that is development or progress. Right. Intellectual property rights are subordinated to these objectives and must be saved in order to serve them in as much as possible. Hence, it seems inappropriate to blame intellectual property right as constituting obstacles for development. Now, a true intellectual property rights cannot be antithetical to development because it is prioritizing societal responsibility on economic benefits. Economic benefits is important, but societal responsibility, development, progress, that is more important than economic benefits. But yes, too strong or too weak intellectual property right can have a negative impact on development. So that's why I said moderate. The researcher, the inventor, the publisher, they should not be paid less or they should not be paid more. Some balance must be sought. Now, if the intellectual property right legislation brings this balance, then it will, give a kind of faith to the publisher, to the creator of a knowledge, and it will also produce greater social relevance. So in the beginning, I said that right means social responsibility. Intellectual property right means, again, it is a social responsibility of intellectuals through their work. They should not always think about the economic benefits. They should go beyond the economic benefits. Next slide. So that's it. Thank you, IQAC Internal Quality Assurance Committee, IQAC team of DAV Autonomous College Titlagarh for organizing this event and inviting me to speak on this, theme. That's it for my side.
Sir, should we open the session for question answer?
Yes, yes.
Yes, students, you may ask questions.
Sir, if the owner of an intellectual property dies, can we reach their intellectual property in our research works without giving them credit?
You have to give reference to, if you have referred my work, then it is always good for you to give reference. When you are giving reference, you are also exposing your honesty, your truthfulness. Why to, steal someone's idea? Every individual, they are gifted by nature, and nature has given you the potential to think differently. Yes, you can
Yes, sir.
use my idea as a base, but you can develop your own idea as a superstructure. And your idea will become the base of another scholar, another, maybe your student, again they will build up knowledge based on your idea. So it is always helpful and it is always good not to steal the ideas of others. Always give reference. The more you refer, it means you are exposing that you have learned, you have read, and you are intellectual.
Yes, sir.
Sir, as said, intellectual property rights give rights or control to the creators over how their creations are used and make sure others can't copy or use them without permission. So, when we see that particular thing in a collective scenario, ensuring benefits for others as well, how can intellectual property rights are to be given to individuals and not to the means collective organizations? And how can we ensure that intellectual property rights be managed to produce important medicinal facilities and medicines to life-saving diseases, especially in
Yes,
poor
so far as,
countries?
okay, got it. So far as the creator of a piece of knowledge or a patent is concerned, it is not always an individual, even a team. A team is a collective body. A team can also, develop a new knowledge, right? And when you are developing a new knowledge, certainly you need money. You invest certain, resources to develop a piece of knowledge, and you have every right to get back that resources at least minimum. So there are two things that you have invested, you have put your labor, and you need your labor should be paid fast. At the same time, you need to think about your societal responsibility towards the larger society, what I was repetitively emphasizing. So if there is a conflict between the economic incentives and societal responsibility, then the societal responsibility will prevail upon the economic incentives. But economic incentives has its own very strong logic, that why a publisher, why a team, or why a individual need or require, I mean, money for their work, for their investment. One cannot defy it. Resources are involved. Time is money now. Time is money. If I am investing time, it means I must get it back. But does it mean that I should always think about, should an intellectual should always think about money? No. There are many things that money cannot buy. There are also scientists. They are working and they are not demanding a penny from the publishers. And there are also publishers, after publishing a work, they are putting it on Libzen, and from Libzen you can download the work. They are not getting a penny, but they are getting a recognition, larger recognition by the larger audience. They become popular. It's not that incentives are always economic in form. There are also non-economic incentives. I hope that you got the answer.
Yes. Sir, when we see that in a societal perspective, can we ensure that intellectual property rights gives us the space to increase collaboration among the organizations while maintaining sustainability?
Basically, intellectual property rights is there in order to protect your piece of work, protect your piece of knowledge from misuse, right?
Yes.
Basically, it is there, if you are misusing my work, then I have right over my, intellectual property. I mean, I have right on my work. If you are, saying what I have already said, and if you are not referring me, that it means that you are stealing my property.
Yes, sir.
And when you are stealing my property, then you are misusing, you are abusing my property also, right? And
Yes,
rights
sir.
are there to protect it. But yes, there are after my death, suppose I wrote something, and maybe after 1 year I died. Now I am not there to claim my property right? You can
Yes, sir.
also claim. I mean, you may write what I have written, and you may not refer me. If I am alive,
Yes, sir.
then I will go against you. If I am not alive, then I cannot go against you. But certainly, you are developing yourself as a dishonest, researcher or intelligent person. It
Yes,
is,
sir.
it's of you actually. I mean, if you want to be a intellectual, then there is a fair way. Or if you adopt a unfair way of becoming intellectuals, then I mean the destiny will take you to its own side. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can intellectual property owners sell their patents for economic incentives?
To some I mean, to for a specific period of time they can do that, because it's temporal in nature. If I have developed a patent and I have invested, then I will always want my money, my labor should be paid. But should I hide it, and should I always do a kind of blackmailing to the state that I will not give this secret, I will give you the product and you have to depend on me? No. You take your labor
Yes, sir.
charge, then give it to the society, because the development of your piece of knowledge, it is not your own, strictly speaking. You have developed the idea on the basis of previous ideas, shared knowledge, what I call. If it is not genuinely yours, if it is based on previous knowledge, then how come you will say that is yours? And you should always try not to be obstacle of innovation. The more you expose your idea, because after a particular period of time, after some time, new ideas will come and your ideas will be outdated. Will you say that my ideas are universal in nature? No, you cannot say that. So for some time you can claim, but after that you have to make it OER, Open Educational Resources, a part of OER system.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other question?
Any other? Nowadays, they play.
One last question, sir. As
Okay.
you said, we should means encourage in intellectual property rights in innovation and all. So, what if I steal your idea, develop it into mine for a greater good of the society? Am I still liable to a punishment or crime?
Uh, if Are you saying that if you are dishonestly doing good things for the society,
Yes,
both
yes,
are
sir.
antithetical
By
to
stealing
each
your
other?
idea, that
See,
too.
on I got it. I mean, on one hand you will be dishonest, on the other hand you will be socially relevant. I think these two are not, these two are antithetical to each other. A dishonest person cannot be a social asset, right? I mean, if I'm honest, then I can contribute to the society. If I'm dishonest, then my contribution to this society will cannot be genuine. It will be superficial in nature. Now, if you are stealing my idea, what hesitate you to give reference? Why you say that stealing is a good practice? Stealing, certainly it is not a good
Yes, sir.
practice now. So
Yes, sir.
better you give reference. I know that what I will say, you will not say that. But what you will say, you are examining what I say, and you are saying differently,
Yes,
and it
sir.
will become a different piece of work. See, you can by taking you can, by becoming genuine, you can, if you can produce knowledge. By becoming genuine, if you can produce knowledge, why to be ingenuine?
Yes, sir.
Okay then. Okay. So thank you for your questions. I have to leave because I have some other responsibility. I have to go to the controller unit.
Sir,
Thank you, sir.
sir, 1 minute, sir. Sir, I just request Dr. Umakanta Sahu to present a brief vote of thanks.
ମିଶ୍ର ସାର୍ ନମସ୍କାର।
Namaskar.
ହ୍ୟାଲୋ। ଶେଷରେ ଆମେ
You are audible. You are audible.
ପହଞ୍ଚିଛୁ। ଯାହା ବି ସାର୍ ଆପଣ ଆଜି ଆସି ଯୋଗଦାନ କଲେ, ବହୁମୂଲ୍ୟ ସମୟ ଅପଚୟ କରି এই ডিএভি মহাবিদ্যালୟରେ ଜ୍ଞାନର ଫଳକୁ ପ୍ରବାହିତ କରି ଆମକୁ ଆପଣ ଜ୍ଞାନ ଦାନ କରି ପାବନ କରିଥିବାରୁ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ଅଶେଷ ଅଶେଷ ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ ସାର୍। ଆମର ଶିକ୍ଷକ ତଥା ଛାତ୍ରଛାତ୍ରୀ ମାନଙ୍କର ତାଙ୍କୁ ନଲେଜ ପ୍ରଦାନ କରି ତାଙ୍କ ମାଇଣ୍ଡକୁ ସେନ୍ସଟାଇଜ କରି ଆପଣ ଆଜି ଯୋଉ ପ୍ରକାର ଏ ଗୋଟେ ପ୍ରାସଙ୍ଗିକ ବିଷୟରେ ଆପଣ ଯୋଉ ଦୀର୍ଘ ସମୟ ଧରି ଯେତେ ଡିସ୍କସନ କଲେ, ଆଲୋଚନା ପର୍ଯ୍ୟାଲୋଚନା କଲେ, ସେଟା ଆମକୁ ଏଇ ଅମା ଅନ୍ଧକାରରୁ ଜ୍ଞାନ ଜଗତକୁ ଆଣିଲେ। ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ମୁଁ ମୋ ଅନ୍ତରର ଗଭୀରତମ ପ୍ରଦେଶରୁ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ ଜ୍ଞାପନ କରୁଛି ସାର୍। ଏବଂ ମୁଁ ତଥା ଡିଏଭି କଲେଜ ତରଫରୁ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ ଜ୍ଞାପନ କରୁଛି ଏବଂ କୃତଜ୍ଞତା ଜଣାଉଛି ମଧ୍ୟ। ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟରେ ये जो वेबिनार सेंटर थे आम अध्यक्ष डीएवी महाविद्यालय अध्यक्ष जहाँ बलिष्ठ नेतृत्व रे ए प्रकार सेमिनार एवं वेबिनार गुड़ाक सब चलती एवं गोटे माने शैक्षिकतार उत्तम वातावरण सृष्टि करा जायछि। तांको मु मध्य आज धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करुछि। एवं तृतीय रे हमर जो सहकर्मी अछंती शिक्षक एवं कर्मचारी जो मानकर सचेष्टा एवं सदुद्यम बल आज वेबिनार मुख्यतः आज वेबिनारटा सक्सेस होती धन्यवाद जनाऊँगी। एवं से बहुमूल्य अपचय कर वेबिनार रे जोग दे ताकू सक्सेस कर धन्यवाद। एवं स्पेशल थैंक्स दिया जाउछि हमर सतपति सार को जे आपनक सहित आम मिश्र सार परी गोटे बुद्धिजीवी गोटे प्राज्ञ पुरुष सहित आमको कनेक्ट करथिले, आमको संयोग करथिले। तेणु मो आमर इंग्राजी विभाग प्राध्यापक केसी सतपति सार को आईक्यूसी तरफ एवं मो तरफ आमर डीएवी तरफ तांको अशेष धन्यवाद जनाऊँगी। टेक्निकाली असिस्ट करथिले आमर एबी दास तांको भी मो अशेष धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करुछि। पुणी जो आईक्यूसी टीम को धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करुछि जहाँ एवं मुख्यतः मैडम जो अच्छा सस्मिता पाणिग्राही मैडम तांको विशेष विशेष धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करुछि जहाँ प्रचेषार सदुद्यम एपरी गोटे बौद्धिकतार विकास डीएवी माटी रे प्रस्फुटित होछि। तेणु मो मैडम को अशेष अशेष धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करुछि। शेष आमर जो प्राण केन्द्र बोली कह जाउछि सर ज्ञानर आमर छात्र छात्री माने जो माने कि दीर्घ समय धरिकी पेसेंटली शुणुले धैर्यर सहित शुणुले एवं योगदान करथिले। तांकर जो पार्टिसिपेशन थिला जो अंशग्रहण थिला वेबिनार रे एवं मिश्र सार संगे जो प्रकार से माने इंटरैक्ट कले सेति पे एवं जो माने इंटरैक्ट करथिले एवं जो माने भी योगदान करछन्ते छात्र माने बहुत समय धरिकी दीर्घ 1 घंटा 1.5 घंटा धरिकी एडी धैर्यर सहित शुणुले सेमानकु भी शेष रे मु धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करछि। धन्यवाद सर, धन्यवाद जहाँ भी हो आपन पुणी थे धन्यवाद ये प्रकार आमको सुजोग देथिले एवं ए डीएवी माटी को पवित्र करथिले ज्ञानालोक प्रदान करथिले। धन्यवाद मिश्र सर।
So thank you one and all. I think I have already thanked all. And at the end, let me say that if colleges will do such kind of works, it will always develop or create a better environment. And university, it depends on the quality sustained and maintained by the college. The more our colleges will develop, it will positively contribute to the development of the university. So I am very happy that you organized it. I hope that you will also organize similar kind of events with different resource person. And I always want the organizers to invite young young scholars. They can say better things relating to recent times, right? And we need to modernize our thought. We are living in a postmodern world, we are living in a post behavioral world, and accordingly we should think and we should act. So thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.